What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And my amazing guest today is Roni Robbins. Hi, Roni.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's
Cool,
cold
cool,
here
cool.
in Atlanta, but I imagine you're warm where you are.
Well, yeah, we're a little bit
No?
warmer, but I know the
Oh,
East Coast is getting hammered, so
yeah.
it'll
Yep.
pass. You'll be back hot and
Mhm.
sweaty in no time.
Exactly.
So, Ronnie, I'm just going to read your bio real quick, your introduction, and then we'll hit the ground running. Is that okay?
Sure.
Cool, biz.
Appreciate.
All right, everybody. This is Roni Robbins, and Roni is the award-winning novel Hands of Gold. Capitalizes on Roni Robbins' nearly 4 decades as a published writer, a staff reporter for daily and weekly newspapers, a freelancer for national, regional, and online publications. Ronnie is currently a freelance reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Medscape WebMD, where she was previously an editor after serving as associate editor of the Atlanta Jewish Times. Robbins' articles appeared in the Huffington Post, Forbes, New York Daily News, Adweek, WebMD, and Healthline. Ronnie was a staff writer for the Florida Today, USA Today, the Birmingham News, and the Atlanta Business Chronicle American City Business Journals. Ronnie has also wrote for Mother Nature Network, Daily Report, American Lawyer Media, The Forward, From the Grapevine, the Hadassah Magazine, among others. In addition to major CEOs and politicians, she has interviewed such celebrities as Wolf Blitzer, Andy Gibb, Hank Aaron, and Usher.
Mm.
The Hands of God book has really been pretty successful here. Hands of God won the 2023 International Book Awards for Multicultural Fiction and the 2023 Global Book Awards Gold Medal for Biographical-Survival. The novel was a finalist in the 2024 American Literacy Awards for Multicultural Fiction, earning a five-star rating in the 2023 Reader's Choice Book Awards Best Adult Book, and was a finalist in the 2022 American Fiction Awards Family Saga. It was also a quarterfinalist for historical fiction in the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award contest. So, Ronnie, our book
Mhm.
here, Hands of God, has been a real success here as far as what all the praise are saying, huh?
In terms of that, yes, if that's how you judge success, there are different judges for success, right?
Yeah. Book
So
sales would be a good one.
book
We'd
sales
like a
would
lot
be
of
good.
those.
And I'm still waiting for the book to take off. Winning contest doesn't necessarily bring that upon you as an author. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
get
it
that.
takes a lot of work.
I have a thing for authors, so I've interviewed a lot of them. I love them, and yeah, it's tough out there with that. But
Yep.
just real quick, I want to get into the book. I want to get into your story, but because we're the What
Sure.
If You Could
Good.
podcast,
Uh,
um, do you have a what if you could moment, a what if you could thought? Was there ever a what if I could do something moment for Ronnie? What would that be?
well, I will say realistically, it was what if I could publish a book? So I've done that. If I go back, I think originally I wanted to be a musician. Doesn't everyone want to be a rock star? Well, I didn't necessarily need to be a rock star, but I thought I would be a musician. Not that great of a voice, so I don't know what I was kidding myself with. I mean, it's just like, yeah, you want to be a celebrity, you want to be a either an actress or a musician, and I was learning guitar and figured that was sure step into being a musician, a professional musician. But I realized from that I just like to write the lyrics. So it's interesting how your goals in life change and you decide maybe just stick with what you're good at and not try to push it to be in and I don't really know where that came from, that I thought I would be a musician, but I wasn't that great at singing or playing the guitar. So realistically, fall back upon what I was good at, and that was writing poetry, writing lyrics. I had won a contest early on for writing a Mother's Day contest, for entering a Mother's Day contest, writing about my mom, and won all kinds of things, a 10-speed bike and lovely gifts for her. So maybe that was, that seemed like the better route for me. And it just took me a while to figure that out. So what if I could be a musician? That's okay. What if I could be an author? That's happened. Now, what if I could be a really successful bestseller New York Times author would be nice. So all of that.
Is New York Times still, I mean, is that still the gold standard? Everyone wants to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Is that still the big one?
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's one of them, these awards that I won, they're nice. You know what? I just want to sell books. That's all. I would like the book to take off. I know that the book is good because the award selection committees have judged it so. And I was also in a book festival with big names like Nikki Haley and John Meacham and
Oh,
Michael Oren, Benjamin Netanyahu, Melissa Rivers, about her mom, Joan Rivers. So, there's Jodi Picoult. So there's a lot of, and my reviews, I had a review in the Jerusalem Post and in Washington Jewish Week, and the book is in the Holocaust Museum gift shop. So
wow.
there's small signs of success, but yeah.
So how did you go from being the next, what, Janis Joplin? I don't know, to being, to age myself. I don't know anyone. I don't know any musician. To being a journalist, because that's really your profession, right? Journalism. I mean, writing for publications and interviewing people.
It really started with a fascination with my penmanship. I like to tell the story that you get a new notebook and you start being very neat with your school notes, and I just enjoyed the writing, the actual writing of the notes. And then poetry. Like I said, I was seeing that I liked writing poetry and putting words together to win contests. So in high school, a very popular friend of mine, I wasn't popular, but she was, like homecoming queen-ish level. I had a few of those, but I was not popular, so I don't know how that happens. But, in high school, that's all what you want to do is be,
Right.
apparently I've always had a big ego. But she told me that she was going to major in journalism, and I hadn't given a whole lot of thought to it. And I thought, that sounds about right. I'm good at English papers and writing. I was seeing that I did well in my English classes. I enjoyed my English classes. I did well on my papers. So I decided to take a shot at that, and I took a journalism class in high school. It was the high school yearbook, and everyone's assignment was to write the opening copy to the school yearbook. This was in Long Island, New York. And the whole class came back with their submission for the opening copy of the yearbook, which was based on the silver screen generation of the 1980s. And people were reading theirs, like teacher asked for people to read theirs out, and a friend must have looked at my paper or just was, I must have said, here, this is what I came up with. And she said, have her read it, have Roni read hers. So I read it, and the class was quiet, so I stopped. And the teacher goes, come on, keep going, keep going. And then afterwards, the teacher said, that's our opening copy, and she's going to be our copy editor. And that was a pivotal moment where I was like, wait, I'm good at this, and okay, that was like, and then I got a scholarship for journalism to the college that I was going to. Now, granted, I didn't realize it at the time that having a New Yorker come to a Southern school is a big thing, a big check mark. Yay, got one. So I didn't realize that that's how that goes. But years later, I was like, wait, really? I wasn't that great in journalism. I just checked off your box. I mean, I'm just thinking that's how it went down. But they gave me money, so I came. And then I used it properly. I moved up the ranks from reporter to editor-in-chief in my senior year of my college newspaper. So things seemed to progress in that way. There were signs along the way that this was a good path for me. And then it just developed from there. And way more information than you needed.
No, this is all, I want all the info, Roni. You got to give me everything. I want all the information because that's how we kind of get to who and what you are, right? And how we get through the steps of, so you kind of just stumbled into journalism. I mean, it wasn't like, when some people want to be a soldier, some people want to be a fireman, some people want to be a reporter, and some people want to be a rock and roll superstar like me. I wanted to be the lead singer for Led Zeppelin. It didn't work out. I can't grow the hair, but yeah. So you kind of stumbled into this, and then did you, when you go, what's the deal with journalism school? I mean, are there other areas? Can you go there to be an author? Can you go there to be a newspaper person? I mean, what did you do when you got there?
So I was on the newspaper track. There was probably a yearbook, but it was news editorial. And from news editorial, you could, now remember, this was before online, anything. Yeah. So there wasn't digital media back then. And now there is. Now that would be how anyone would develop their journalism. But back then it was writing for a newspaper. And so there were other options. I could have been a broadcast journalist. I could have been a radio journalist. Well, that's radio or TV broadcast. I could have been public relations. I could have been photography. I think those were all the specialties you could choose from within the journalism track. But I was on news editorial. That was my track. And print journalism, I should also say. What was the other option for that? I don't know. Broadcast journalism, I guess, but print journalism was where I was headed. So we trained to write for a newspaper, and we had the college paper, to practice with. Some journalists probably didn't take advantage of that. It's you're studying, you're studying. They're studying journalism, but in truth, I don't think you can do journalism unless you practice it. Unless I had 2 internships during that time in the summer. I think you got to take advantage of your summers. So sophomore and junior year. So I was on my way. Great, on my way. Got my job, took a little bit after graduating, got my first job, got my second job. Then everything changed, right? Because everything is online. So in like 2008, I think, well, let's go back. I was working from when I graduated until I had children. And I decided I wasn't good at managing everything. Not sure, how that goes, but at some point we, women, my generation were told, you can do it all. You can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan. That was my generation, right? So yep. Women were just starting to work. There weren't very many of them in the workforce. They were home with their children. So I tried that for a while, but what they don't tell you is if you don't work a 9 to 5 job or a 9 to, I don't know what the 7 to 3 job, I don't know what it would be, you're going to have a hard time spending any time with your children. So they were getting shortchanged. My son was in a daycare being raised by people I didn't think had the same level of education that I did. So I decided to stay home and freelance and write this book. So yeah, so I still was doing too much at one point and not specializing in any one area. So that's why it took me a long time to get the book published, because it took me a long time to write it
Do
too.
you, when when you were doing the journalism, did you ever think, oh man, I'm going to be one of those fancy, famous, foofy news anchor people on TV? Or were you like, no, I like the nitty gritty, get the news and do the interviews and get the scoop type of journalist?
Yeah, I had a lot of confidence problems considering I chose a field that required you to be super confident. I didn't totally remember. I said I wasn't one of the popular girls. I wasn't totally confident in myself for a
Yeah.
very long time. So I forced myself to be confident somehow. But still, I was hiding behind the screen. And I still do, here I am doing podcast and I never thought I'd be wanting to be on screen. Still not the most comfortable place for me because I'm sort of like almost a romance writer hiding behind the script of your, I'm not super heavy, but I would say that I have a sedentary life. I compensate by working out intensely and spinning and walking and weightlifting. But I would say I hide behind the computer most times and I'm very comfortable there. So being in front of people, is a harder thing for me. Now I've moved past worrying about what people think about me. And that's where I think the confidence comes into play and knowing, being comfortable in your own skin, knowing who you are, but at this point, but it took a long time.
Well, that's a big step too, writing a book. I mean, you're really putting yourself out there because you could just get completely either ignored, totally hammered, by the whoever the book experts are, I mean, so that's you pour your life's work into something and then just get annihilated by the press or something like that. That's you takes a lot of confidence to put yourself out there. So when did this little seed of I'm going to write a book pop into your head there?
So I want to say that my mom gave me cassette tapes of my grandfather's life and his adventures in Europe and in America, his adventures and his near-death experiences, crossing countries, escaping from conscription into the army, Czechoslovakian army. And the near-death experiences would be he had tuberculosis. He was told he was terminal with tuberculosis at 26, but he lived till 86. And he was a clinical trial patient for streptomycin, which is still used today and paved the way for the medicines that are used today to treat tuberculosis, which is still the largest infectious disease killer in the world. And maybe not in America as much, but it does still exist. And so there was a lot to his story. Now, first, I just listened to the tapes. And then I wrote a column for the paper that I was working for at the time. And then when I made a decision to stay home, that decision to stay home with my children, when my second was born, I think I started and staying home because it was, my job was deadlines and you can't say, hey, I got to go get my kid because, you've got a story breaking. That's not how that works. So I transcribed, but I made that decision to stay home, to continue freelancing, and to write this book, to take a column that I wrote about keeping memories alive and the legacy that somebody can leave to their family in this way, through their voice, through their leaving their life story on tape, a living legacy. So I transcribed all the tapes, and then I researched and massaged and then put it out there. And you say, it's putting myself out there. Yes. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome about, yes, I'm a published writer. And my freelancing involved getting my self out there, and some of my stories were picked up by very big publications. So I did really well in that regard. I wouldn't have gotten those opportunities, I don't think, if I stayed working full time for publications. So there were a lot of benefits from it. And also, but I was afraid. Yes, you can be a published writer, and I had imposter syndrome about being an author. I was not an author. It took me a long time to even figure out that I was an author. You become an author when you write the book. And somebody said that to me, and I'm like, really? Like, are you sure? Like, it's not out there. It's not published yet. And they're like, no, you're an author. You wrote the book. So, I didn't think I was on the level of anyone, anyone that had an important book out there. I didn't know where I would stand. I didn't think I was good enough for it. So I kept massaging and revising and getting feedback. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to let it loose. And it took me twice entering a contest before I won the contest. And, I won I was a quarter finalist, so I made it to the bottom level of the contest. But, and then, and enough, a few yeses among all the rejections. So it's not an easy climb to get to where you're a published author by any means. I lost my first publisher. I could have stopped at any point and said, that's it, throw up my hands, I'm done. This is too hard. And it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And when I resigned myself to saying that, another opportunity to submit would come through, and I took another chance. And as it turned out, family members helped connect me. So it really was down to connections and others helping me within my family. So comes back to the family, which is the subject of my novel. So it makes sense.
So to all you budding authors out there, never give up. Because when you think you've hit the wall, you haven't. There's another door going to open. So did you ever consider self-publishing, or were you always just going to put that out to a publisher and have them handle it for you?
I always was going to put it out to a publisher, because in that I was published by major publications, I thought that I was worthy of it to be published by a publisher. There are some pros and cons to having a professional publisher. Self-publishing at that time was not even looked at as highly. It wasn't valued as much, or maybe it was just me. Some self-published have done amazing things, and then they got picked up by bigger publishers. I get all that. But I was holding out for the golden ticket. I was holding out for having gone through a slush pile and being chosen, this contest type philosophy, that I'm not really understanding that I'm good until somebody tells me that I'm good. So I didn't want to subject my family to buying my book either, or everyone I know. Here, buy it. I have no idea if it's any good. This way I knew that it had been through a reader and selected, that there were some that didn't make it and mine did. So that happened twice because I lost my first publisher over a legal concern that somebody might sue me who didn't. But I was concerned to get an LLC, and the question was why. And the first publisher got cold feet. So then 6 months later, I got another publisher. So I got not only one, but two yeses. But it was very depressing during that time when I was told that that the publisher wasn't going to follow through with me because of a fear that there might be a suit against me. The second publisher said the person would sue me, not that they wouldn't sue the publisher, so they didn't care. Go for it. We're going for it. So
Why would someone sue you for defamation? Did you put something in there that was truth that someone wouldn't like to hear, so they'd sue you for defamation or something like that? Why would someone sue you?
perhaps, yes. I mean, I played with the facts. So when they seem to be controversial, maybe, if there was drama to be had, I was looking for the drama. You want people to turn your pages. If you have a perfect family life, who cares? If there's some, skeletons or at least questionable behaviors, I played with the facts to make it dramatic. Yes, I did. And these were personal lives of people. Obviously, this is my family. So so I took some liberties, and they might not sit well with everyone. Now it's interesting because some family members, or at least one family member that I asked, I said, listen, did you have any problems with this part of the book about, your dad? And he said, it's fiction, right? And I said, yes, exactly. So, but not all family members felt the same way. The majority of family have been very supportive and felt like I captured the characters well. But not everyone will agree with you. And yes, there was personal information played with. So, my grandparents were young people one time. They had sexual feelings for each other. There was big secret sex that happened. And I didn't, I really, kept it very clean, I would say. But these were two people who were attracted to each other. There's romance in this book. I didn't see any other way to make it romantic unless there was some sexual tension. That makes it be uncomfortable. The fact that my grandmother was a sexy woman. Ooh, yeah, no, I don't know that she should be sexy. The fact that my grandfather had the hots for her, maybe that is not really what should be exposed in a family story. But this was not a story that was meant for my family only to read. This was a story that was supposed to be expanded, that's supposed to be relevant to a larger audience, that anyone could read the book, could say, this is my family, or I wanted them to turn the pages, and I was willing to do whatever I had to play up on certain aspects of the journey of the story.
How long were your grandma and grandpa married?
So they were married 65 years, and they died on the date of each other, coming up next week, January 31st. They died exactly a year apart. And so when my grandfather died a year after my grandmother, he was the same age as she had been when she died. That was a powerful first spark, and there are literal sparks in the book, when they met. And this was a romance. I mean, these people went through a life together. My grandmother was a breadwinner was the breadwinner for 5 children when my grandfather was in and out of rehabilitation. Well, not all of them came at that point, but she was the breadwinner for the family, and they did have 5 children. And so they went through a lot together. He was in a workplace shooting spree. He saved people from a gunman. That some of that is based on fact, and some of that is fiction. I played around with the information. It's based on fact. All of it is based on fact. And then I played with the information. That's how that went down. I made up all the dialogue. I changed all the names. But at the beginning of the book, she says, tie up loose ends and meet me in heaven. I almost named the book Meet Me in Heaven, but that was well used by that point. Other titles had used that, or movies. So overused. So but there was definitely a romance that was weaved throughout the book, and a support system that spouses have for each other that you could sense from the beginning of the book till the end.
What a blessing to have the hots for your partner for 65 years. I mean, we see marriages last like 3 weeks and 80% of people get divorced within 2 years. It's like, can you imagine just, being able to look? I had that with my first wife. She passed after 28 years from cancer, but I just
Oh, I'm
remember
sorry.
even when she was at her sickest with the chemo and stuff, I'd still look at her and go, dude, you're still the freaking most beautiful person in the whole planet. And you think that we'd still be together, it'd be 36 years now. But
Mm.
it's just, imagine having that for 65 years. I mean, there's ups and downs. I mean, sometimes you look at your spouse and just want to kill them, let alone tell them how beautiful they are. But
Yeah.
when you were doing the book, you said you kind of played with facts a little bit, and you kind of have to make something, to embellish something a little bit. Did your editor recommend that, or did they mess with your book a lot? I hear kind of editors sometimes mess with people's books a lot.
So my first editor did a lot of rewriting, and got the book to the point where it was so much better than it was originally. I mean, of course, she was taking it on, but she made it even better. And then the second editor did, the second publisher, sorry, the second publisher had some other suggestions. So, but not really dramatically, like changing the storyline, improving upon what I already had. So
What's the difference
no.
between a publisher and an editor? Don't you have an editor too who goes through the book and cleans stuff
Mm.
up, or no? You don't have an editor too?
So the first publisher did everything herself, and the second publisher had somebody, but I don't really know how much they did, and they might have missed some stuff, in my opinion. Remember, I'm a writer and an editor, so it's probably relatively clean. My writing was probably relatively clean. Some typos, yeah. So then some of them I had to correct after the book came out too. So it's a process.
What's
Um,
the deal with when you put it together? Like, I know a lot of people who puts like together a manuscript years, and we're gonna go, I'm gonna write this book one day, and wrote a bunch of stuff and put together, and then it just sat there forever, and then they said, you know what, it's the time of my life, I want to get it out, I want to make this a book. Did you just write when you got those tapes and started putting them together and stuff like that? Did you go, that was the spark, it's like, I'm gonna focus, I'm gonna write this book, or did it sit around for a little bit?
okay, I was very consistent about writing the book. But like I said, I was second guessing myself, so I revised it a lot, and the original and rewrote it completely at one point too. In that, not from scratch, but a bit of it. I think the first draft of it was probably just straightforward from the tapes without any dialogue, just my grandfather's voice from start to finish. But then I went back and reworked and added drama um and of course the dialogue, and also added some secrets, made it, so dramatic with a few little secrets in the book, that, maybe like, oh, now I get the title, why she named it that, or, different parts. There were definite secrets to share as the book developed, that you learn about at the beginning, but you have to wait to figure out what in the world is being talked about. So I did.
Were
I
you
didn't.
close
I
with your
didn't.
grandpa before
Yes.
you received the tapes?
Yes. Yes. And these were given to me after he died. So the answer is that I worked consistently, but I kept revising and not feeling. And I also, like I said, was raising my children and freelancing at the same time. So did it sit around for a long time? Not very long. I was working very consistently on it. But again, I was working for 7 years to get it to the point where I felt like it was good enough to put it into an award. And then it took me 2 more years. So I wasn't in any big rush. Let's just say that. I was doing it slow and steady. It did not sit around too long, though. It was pretty consistent. People were saying there were, pretty, I'm sure my friends were like, when is this damn book going to come out? But yeah, I mean, I think you're just talking about it. You really don't have any book. I mean, they saw that I won an award at one point, but yeah.
So start to finish just took you over 9 years to do the book?
Start to finish, it took me more than 20 years to do the book. It took me 7 years to enter the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award contest, 2 more years to win it. And then I spent the rest of the time trying to get a publisher. So 10 years to get a publisher. And then, remember, I got a publisher. I worked with her for 2 years. And then then she dropped me, and then I had to find it. I got a new publisher. So, yes, this was a long, drawn out process because I was afraid.
Yeah. So walk me through that. I haven't heard that. This is kind of interesting. So you submitted this for the awards before it was an actual published book?
Yeah,
Wow.
yes,
That took some guts.
Well,
That took a lot of guts to do
it
that.
was because they were judging it based on the beginning of it. They were judging the first couple of chapters, a certain amount of the book, and that's why it was a quarterfinalist, I think. And then I think when they wanted the full book, but at the beginning, for the first phase, they just wanted the beginning of it. So I won in the first phase. I didn't continue. So had I continued, they would have analyzed more of the book, to be a quarterfinalist, then finalist, then, winner, I guess. But you had to take the first step. So, and, I had to learn over this time period what I should do. I mean, authors think they should go to agents. So of course I kept, trying to get an agent for a long time. And then I realized I don't need to have an agent. I can go directly to the publisher. And that's exactly what I did. I needed to have the right connections. I needed to be desperate enough. Who knows why it took me so long? And as I was waiting, or I kept sending out inquiries. I was not going to give up on this dream, but I was still youngish, and I was not in a big, huge rush. So I was also freelancing. So, and that is why I also was able to get back into my career when I was ready, because I had the clips, I had the newspaper articles, and I was published the whole time I was staying home with my children. So I didn't miss, everything. And I wasn't totally out of my career. I could come back in when I was ready, when my children were grown enough, going off to college and such. So, and didn't need me as much. So, but I was super patient, and I finally got to the finish line. So I try not to dwell on how long it took me.
But you know what? Honestly, Roni, that's really common. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of authors. It's super common. I mean, I've got a bunch of authors who said, I put this manuscript together for a book in college, you know, and then I had to do my career, then I had to raise a family and blah blah blah. And like 30 years later, I got it out and wrote a book. You know, it's like so it's super common, really, that it just takes a huge window of time to do it. But I want to go back with about grandpa because I'm sorry I cut you off there in the middle there. So, did you know your grandpa growing up before? Did you know his history and all this stuff before you got these tapes?
We knew a little bit of it. See, I knew that when I knew them, my grandmother was always the one that was lumbering around with heavy legs from circulation problems, and he seemed like the healthy one. Now, we were told that he had had health issues earlier on. But I didn't know him then. So, and I saw him as a super healthy person. He seemed to be fine. He wasn't having the issues that she was. She was heavier and she was having trouble with her legs. So I didn't know that. What we also didn't know is about the Holocaust, because they didn't talk about the Holocaust. The book has a bit of Holocaust. They lost all of their family, most of their family, large families in the Holocaust, and they had to hear about it in America. My grandfather left before World War II. So, yes, it could have been him. And he had a lot of guilt about, not doing enough. Could he have done more? Why wouldn't they listen to him? Nobody knew it would get that bad. So they stayed and tried to endure. But then we know what happened. So he had like 11 siblings, and the majority of them perished in the Holocaust. A few of and his parents, and a few of them had already come to America, and that's why he came to America. So he had a dream to come to America and the golden land of America, the land of opportunity. And he ventured out one time and he didn't have enough money, so he had to double back and then rethink, and then went out again and was successful, jumping ship, working on a work ship. He jumped ship. He was able to, he walked across several countries to get to the point where he could work on a ship. And then, he got lucky and connected. And then he worked on a ship, jumped ship, jumped into America, and made his way from Canada to New York. So yeah, there was a lot to this story. And but yes, the answer is I knew him. I thought highly of him. He was a very religious man, in my opinion. He went to services a lot, synagogue services. He was a leader he sang. They loved music. And he taught us about our Jewish culture. He was the patriarch and she was the matriarch. We had family, we gathered for family holidays together. And so yeah, I knew him, and I just didn't know all these stories. No, I had no idea. They kept a lot of it quiet. I knew they spoke Yiddish every once in a while to keep it quiet from us, and you'd hear something like Kinderloch, and you'd know, or Kinder, and you'd know that meant children, and shh, 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 like don't nah, or they'd go into Yiddish so that we'd be like, what are they saying? What are they saying? So, my mom understood a little bit of it, or I don't know how much he understood, but yeah. So I knew him. I went to services with him. I walked with him. I was fascinated by his hands.
Where did the title Hands, now that you mentioned hands, where did the title Hands of God come from?
It's gold, but everyone always says
Hands
God.
of gold. I'm sorry.
Gold.
Yes,
it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
sorry.
it's fine. It's fine. Hands of gold is also, I wear a hands of gold, may not be able to see it, but let me see if I can pick it up here. It's a hand of gold, but it's the Hamsa. It's a religious, it's supposed to be good luck. My grandmother gave me one. I don't think it was this one, and I lost it and got it back. So there's a whole big story on that. So hands of gold. Yes and no. Is it about the actual hands? I would say no. I mean, the words themselves are meaningful to me. They don't say a whole lot, but the cover of the book, I was trying to be literary and hide some things in the book. So you have to read the book to figure out what Hands of Gold is or could be, because at my book talks, I often ask, and people like sometimes they guess it. But what I try to say is the picture on the cover is misleading. Yes, that is a hardworking man's, a weathered person's hands, a worker's hands, a farmer's hands. And that is true to what there's dirt in the fingernails, under the fingernails. That's the kind of grit that my grandfather would have shown. And he was a farmer, he was a cobbler, he was a tailor. So he worked with his hands. Hands are nurturing. They are holding hands through life. They're romantic. Gold can be the lack of or the wealth. It was the golden land of the promise of a better life in America. The streets were supposed to be paved with gold. So there's a lot of meanings to gold, whether it's not having it or having it. They were on welfare for a while, so they struggled financially for a large period. Like I said, my grandmother was a breadwinner. And did she feel like she could have it all? She wasn't even supposed to have it all. She was just supposed to be a mom back then. So, different generations, a lot of pressure on my generation. And I think maybe it's reverting back after, my daughter probably doesn't want to work. People today don't really want to work that hard. They want to enjoy their lives. They want to be with their families. So that was not the generation I grew up with. And so, yes, a lot of meanings to the words Hands of Gold. And the tagline and the subtitle is One Man's Quest to Find the Silver Lining in Misfortune. So I play up on the money, silver also, silver and gold. I'm very artistic with I'm creative, I'm a creative. So I try to be that way with the book. I'm not sure, it would have probably sold the book better to say the man who was responsible for streptomycin, or I don't know, that wouldn't have been very sexy or anything, but no. So I made it literary. It has been titled biographical literary fiction. So so in that way it keeps to that. But yeah, straightforward titles might have been better. I don't know. The cobbler, the farmer, I don't know how who would care about that.
I love
hero.
I love Hands of Gold. I think
Okay.
I think that's a great, and the actual hands on the cover are impactful. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that means a big difference. And editors and publishers are really good about messing with titles. So if they didn't like it, they would have, I'm sure, brought that up to you, because almost every author I've talked to said, "Yeah, my publisher wanted to mess with my title," or I didn't really have a title when I brought it to a publisher and an editor, and they helped me, find one. So I think it's a great title. I think it's a great book cover also. Did your mom have an inkling when she gave you these tapes that you were going to make it into this scandalous family novel?
I wouldn't say scandalous at all. It's very tame. And like I said, majority of the people that read it in my family have enjoyed it, and it's been all positive. So no, my mother had no idea. She might have thought I would write something, right? She wouldn't have been surprised that I wrote a column. I think if you ask her, she probably would say, I'm not surprised she wrote a book about it. She knew that I would appreciate the cassette tapes. She knew I was very spiritual, like she is. She knew I was a writer. In the tapes, my grandfather says, if there's a writer in the family that would like to do something with this, so be it. Now, I took that as a calling and a charge because I was the only published writer in the family at the time, professionally published journalist at the time, I should say. Now, there are other writers, but that was not their career, that was not their profession. So I took it as a personal calling to do this. Now, the question is she happy with what I produced? I think so. She's very proud of me. Would my grandparents be happy about what I produced? I'm going to ask my own questions of myself. And the answer is, I don't know. I don't think so. They'd like parts of it. They'd like the outcome of the family coming together that have, reached out to me that I didn't know, cousins coming out of the woodworks. They would like they would like that the book brought the family together, not that it broke up the family in any way or caused trouble. And I don't know how they would also feel about the sex scenes. They were very quiet. And like I said, they're tame, but they're in there. It's romance, it's hints, it gives you a sense, it's discreet. So they're my grandparents too. But it's part of our lives. So actually a very exciting part of our lives. So why not, experiment with it? And I forgot to tell you, I also took creative writing in college. And so I did have some experience writing short stories. And this book is really short stories that make up a big story. So I did have some creative writing background. And I think from all my English classes, I always loved how there was symbolism in what you read. And I always was, trying to figure out what that symbolism was and taking pride when I figured it out. And it's like a little hidden nugget, just blows your mind to me when you can figure out that the writer was actually trying to embed a secret message within the book, or that certain things were symbols of, or were literary symbols for the reader to explore and discuss. And that's what I was looking for too with this book.
Awesome.
Like literature.
Who's gonna play your grandmother and grandfather in the movie?
Well, I don't usually get a question about my grandmother. Maybe Meryl Streep, maybe. I don't really know who would play my grandmother. My grandfather, I have an actor son, and he would play the early version for sure. I have another friend who I would, as an actor, I would have him play the older version. Clint Eastwood, maybe. Robert Redford could do a good job. I don't know. It's not a Brad Pitt. It's not that, it's not him. It's more of a classic. Harrison Ford would be great. I don't know if he knows Yiddish though. These are the problems.
I bet he can learn it. Harrison Ford's a pretty brilliant dude.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else.
I like Harrison Ford for your grandpa.
Yeah, you could do a good job too. You've got that look. I don't know.
Because I've got Jewish in the family. So my grandfather came from Germany in 1930, I think 1930.
Okay.
He knew what was going on and he got the heck out of there. His brother Max, Nossick came earlier, like in the late 20s, and said, "You got to get out of there, come to America." So he did, and he immigrated with a gal he had met over there. I really don't even know the story. I've been trying to get my mom to do what your grandfather did, which is just I bought her a tape recorder and a whole stack of tapes. I said, "Ma, just sit there and just start talking into this microphone. It's pretty simple. Press the red button. You can't screw it up, right?" But he came here and so my uncle and my mom were born in New York. in the 30s, 1931 and 1935. And yeah, it was getting bad over there. And the people who saw it and left, saved their lives, and the people who didn't, they weren't. My grandfather wasn't Jewish, um, but still, there was a lot of Jewish blood floating around in there. The Russian blood, German blood.
Hmm.
There's a lot of Jewish blood in there. So he didn't want to take the chance and hightailed it out of there. So yeah, so I look Jewish, so I could play
I don't know.
one of the
I wasn't
periods of your
thinking
dad,
that.
of
I
your
was
grandpa.
just thinking, who would play who would
So
play
is
it?
there, after all this of what you went through to write this book,
Yeah.
is there any idea in your brain to write a second novel?
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
I am starting to. My dad passed away in the past year, almost a year now, and in March. And he was a blacksmith. They have a blacksmith business that my brother took over now. And he built it from our garage to he works with his hands also. He metalsmith, metal worker, steel, worked and bent, created, artistic. That's where I get my artistry. Except mine is literary and his was more physical design. And so I started it and I ended it because I feel like that's the most powerful parts and the easier parts for me to write. How I wanted to start it and how I wanted to end it. Similar to probably similar what I did with Hands of Gold is the beginning and the end, and then the middle is harder for me to just keep building on from the start. The working title is A Mighty Arm. He was not only a blacksmith, a Jewish blacksmith, very odd combination, not something that you hear about. His family was from Russia and they did it there, supposedly. We went all over the country, and he had craft fairs and sold. And so I was part of the beginning of this business that grew into something much bigger, and is now international. With Clint Eastwood was one of their clients, so I know that. There's a whole list of Olivia Newton-John was too. So they were known enough that they've gotten themselves out there. So there's a lot of articles that were written about my dad and how unique this business was. He also was an engineer in Grumman Aerospace and trained the Apollo space launch astronauts on the space shuttle. So there was that part of it. He also was in the Navy and he got injured. So there's that. So interesting men, fascinating men, with personalities, a little bit complex. Two characters. I'm going to explore it. I don't think he wants me to write this. He said it not in uncertain terms. So I'm still
darn it,
gonna.
Ronnie! Don't write
What?
about me like you did about
Oh,
your crap.
well, I was told not while he was alive. So I don't know. He was private. He got a lot of. He seemed to like the publicity because he was written up in all kinds of publications. But it's an interesting character exploration for me, and it should probably help. As has the past year, I go to services or find services online, or when I'm on vacation, I also go to services when I'm vacationing. I go to services there's a mourner's prayer that we say for a whole year. It's also in my first novel that I talk about the mourning period of that full year. And when my grandfather was done with that mourning period, that's pretty much when he died. He died a year to the date. So that made sense and that worked into the novel. I didn't make that part up, but I mean, it was a year anniversary that he died. So with my dad, I'm saying the same mourners prayers every day and supposedly it's to elevate their souls. So I'm working on that, on elevating his soul. And I don't know when I'm also freelancing for 2 publications. So not raising children but I still have the 2 things. I'm still freelancing now for 2 publications. And so it doesn't give me a whole lot of time to work on the book. I do not have 20 years to work on this book.
Sure you
So
do. Of course you
uh,
do. You're
of
still a
course I
youngster.
do. Well, I think we're probably about the same age because you mentioned 1920s, and that's when my grandparents came came here. So, and the children were born in the 30s and 40s, but my mom was was one of the younger ones, and she was born, my grandmother was 40, and then she had another child at 42. That was unheard of also. So my grandfather has line like, I didn't even think I slept with her. How did that happen? That's the kind of humor that he would have, and I try to put that in the novel too. So
I love
we'll
that.
see how the second book comes. A Mighty Arm.
A Mighty Arm. We'll look
That's
for
the
that.
working.
I just have one last question, then I'll let you go. You've been so kind with your time. What
Oh.
did you what did you learn, when you got those tapes and you went through those tapes and you said, I'm gonna put this in a book? Um, what did you learn about your history and your family? And I mean, was there something there that just made you step back and go, wow, my family's got some roots, we've got some history, or what you learn from all this writing this book?
So I think the couple of things were, you're looking for larger picture things, not just incidents that my grandfather, he was part of streptomycin clinical trials. He was in a workplace shooting spree that was written in the New York Daily News, which I ended up freelancing for years later, which how ironic is that? They lost all their family in the Holocaust. Those were things that sort of were like, wow, what's that like? But what I learned was that we, through the journey with him, and creating this novel, was that we have a lot of endurance in ourselves, that we can go through a lot and still have a lovely family life and have a full life and make a difference in the world and leave that kind of legacy behind. In that he was a clinical trial patient for streptomycin, in that he lived that long life and helped himself live and others live. And he made the right decisions, and he was lucky to get out from Europe. But in the end, all he wanted was the simple pleasure of being able to practice his religion in America without any repercussions. He wanted to be healthy, which I don't think we value enough, just appreciation of when you are healthy, which, at the end of his life, he was the healthier one in the relationship. They lost one adult child to leukemia, but they still pushed on. And I think that they went through a lot more than we go through. They went through world wars. They went through the Holocaust. We are going through some stuff. We've gone through COVID. We went through 9/11. We went through COVID. There's a mini Holocaust in Israel that nobody could have imagined would happen and is still underway. Just horrible horrors that people are so evil still to each other. And that's just one country. I know it's, ethnic cleansing in other countries and barbaric and just, people fearing for their lives in other countries. Here in America, the anti-Semitism is out of hand on college campuses, and people feel unsafe. And there's been incidents all over the country that people have been intimidated and fearful and running for their lives. So history does repeat itself, but the overall message is we have the capability to go through so much in our lives, and we just have to push past and appreciate the simple pleasures of family, of the relationships, and of practicing our religion in peace, of having the freedoms in America that I enjoy. I am super lucky with my health. And we have to appreciate those things. We have struggles, we have little issues, we have issues. But how do you get through them? How do you overcome obstacles and persevere and just appreciate the little pleasures that you can enjoy in your life, especially here in America?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as we have a whole generation who, if someone mispronouns them, they have to hide in their room curled in a ball for like a week. And then you look at what your grandparents went through, like, dude, you've got, you don't even know the hardships that are out there in this world. It's just insane how we've just lost the ability to be realistic about things. It's crazy. And when, you writing this book, sharing your family's history, sharing the hardships of what people actually had to go through, 65-year marriage, romantic. I just think it's wonderful. I just think it's a blessing. We all need to cherish our family's history and remember it, because if we don't remember stuff, it just keeps coming back to kick us in the face, right? I mean, we're seeing it all over right now. So, Roni Robbins, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for
You've
your
been
time.
awesome.
This hour just flew by. So,
Yes.
everybody, this is Roni Robbins. Please go get her book, Hands of Gold. We're going to put the link, we're going to put her website, we're going to put all this, but I just want to hear it from Roni. Roni, where can we find you? Where can we get the book? Where can we reach out to you? And what are you on all your stuff?
So social media, I'm all over the place. I've got 4 Facebooks: Roni Robbins, Roni Kane Robbins, Kayne. And you got to spell my name to begin with. That's a challenge. Roni Robbins. I've got a website, www.ronnirobbins.com. You can find out everything you possibly want to know about the book, about me, about my writing, about where I'll be next. Speaking engagements, media appearances, podcasts, like these that I post. And I'm on Twitter. No, nobody does that anymore. X, I don't think anyone does that anymore. I've got 2 Roni Robbins is there. I've got 2 Facebooks for my book, Hands of Gold. Most everything is Roni Robbins of some sort. Roni Kane Robbins, Hands of Gold novel. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, if TikTok can figure things out. My son, the actor, did my TikTok. Instagram, that's Roni.Robbins. It's hard to keep it all straight. I mostly post on Facebook and LinkedIn, Roni Robbins, sometimes on X. But yeah, you can find me. Google my name. And there are a couple of other Roni Robinsons, including my sister-in-law, whose name is spelled exactly the same. But I don't know how often she shows up. There's a singer, Roni Robbins, with a Ronny, real famous, and there's a military person, Roni Robbins. So you got to get the Roni Robbins author, journalist, then you'll know it's me. But you should be able to find me on Google.
Oh, yeah. And we'll put all the links on the podcast so you'll be able to just click on it. And it'll take you right there to all your good stuff. We'll have all your sites and all your stuff and your links to everything. So, everybody, once again, this was Roni Robbins. She's the author of Hands of Gold. Great story. I love every minute of it. And I really enjoyed this, Roni. Thank you so much
Me
for joining
too.
me.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's another episode of the What If You Could podcast. We will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.